Hey guys, welcome to Croatia. I'm your trainer, Tommy Rivs. We are in the seaside city of Split. Say that 5 times fast. We are just outside of Diocletian's palace. We are going to take a gentle, easy culture walk. We're going to explore some of this area. I'm going to explain to you guys why this is one of the most iconic locations in all of Croatia, and still to this day, one of the best preserved Roman palaces in all of the world. Here we go, guys. Just gently, we're gonna go in and take in the sights and the sounds of this place. So as you can see, we are on the ocean. This is the Adriatic Sea. The Adriatic Sea serves as a small branch of the Mediterranean. A third of all of the water that goes into the Mediterranean comes from the Adriatic. So beyond what we can see, these buildings, we have the Dinaric Alps, and then further north we have the Julian Alps. These mountains create a huge amount of snowpack. As that snow melts, it creates rivers. They work their way down, end up here in the Adriatic, and then this flows in to the Mediterranean and then the rest of the ocean systems. We're right on the beach. What we have in the background, guys, behind this harbor, is actually Diocletian's palace. So this is a palace that was built 1700 years ago, almost 2,000 years, guys. This was once a completely rectangular structure built after the fashion of the Roman military fortresses built by the Emperor Diocletian. It was his goal to finish up his work as emperor and then retire in this place. So before he retired, he spent about a decade building this incredible structure. Most of the stone in this structure is actually from the island of Brač. It's right across the strait. One of the islands, one of 1,600 islands off of the coast of Croatia. So right now we're actually on the south side of this structure. What we see right now, all of these restaurants and these terraces right here, this was once a completely integral wall. All of this built 1,700 years ago. This was the deck, essentially the lookout where Diocletian and his family lived. It was on this south side that his actual living quarters were located. So everything that we see right now, all of these buildings built in the last couple of hundred years, have been placed on the outside of that outer wall, which was built 1,700 years ago. Diocletian is actually from this location. He's from Dalmatia within Croatia. That's where we're located right now. Dalmatia, just like the name sounds, this is the location that the Dalmatian dog actually comes from. So that white dog with the black spots, that comes from this region of Croatia. That's probably the most popular reference to that term, named specifically after this county that we're in. So the city of Split is located in Dalmatia, down southern Croatia on the Adriatic. Guys, check out these walls. Huge, almost 2,000-year-old walls. Here, as we come over on the east side, this has become a sprawling market. So in the mornings, all of this is closed. In the evenings, this opens up. Let's just work our way through here. We'll be able to see just a little bit of how this place has changed over nearly 2,000 years. All right. So we'll continue up this east side, guys, and then we'll work around to the north side, and then we'll be able to work our way into this actual palace. So all the stone, guys, as I mentioned, came from the island of Brač. Brač is located to the west out in the Adriatic. You can get there by sailboat. You can get there on a ferry. Multiple ferries leave every day. You can work your way out the direction. You can see, guys, a lot of these structures that have been built in this location are not as old as the Roman structures, but they're still hundreds of years old. There's a lot of Venetian structures that have been built. Let's enter right here. A lot of Venetian structures that have been built starting around 700 years ago. Here we go, guys. Check this out. Those huge Roman arches, the big square entryway, all of this stone coming from Brach. It took right around a decade to transport all of that stone over here. 7 million cubic meters of stone. That's enough stone, guys, to build the pyramids in Egypt. All of this stone transported by boat and then used here to build everything, starting down with the floor, and then, as you'll soon see, below floor level, even deeper, all of these giant, massive stones placed here. Much of the work was done by slaves. It was such a massive undertaking that over 2,000 slaves died during the construction of this palace. So we're going to come in and actually, we'll stay up north for a bit. I want to show you guys the north side of this specifically so we can explore some of the small little narrow streets. A lot of what has been built since the Diocletian era were additional structures built in the 1500s, built during the Venetian period, built even modern day structures, restaurants, hotels, homes, all of these layering that history. Things become somewhat of a zoo later on in the day. So you have people from all over the world that have come here, that have wanted to explore this place. A perfect rectangle. This is a perfect rectangle, and on the corners of the rectangle, there are these high towers. They're octagonal towers. So these octagonal towers are the areas where the soldiers were able to position themselves so that they could see any invasion from land or from sea. When we walked in there from the south, you could see the harbor had built up a water break. So the water level no longer came up to the entrance of the palace, but when Diocletian initially created this structure, this was designed to have easy access to the water, so if there was an actual invasion, he could escape via that route. All right, guys, check out that huge Roman arch. Let's explore this way. Let's go around to the left. Here we go. All right. So you can see these original structures have been supplemented with additional architectural styles. So we have the square, simple Venetian structures put in place, and then we also have Gothic arches and Renaissance arch, which came in. The way, guys, that we distinguish between the Roman arches and the Gothic arches has to do with the way that they're positioned up at the top of that arch. The Gothic arches come together in a point. The Roman arches are rounded. So the reason that the Gothic arches come up into a point, the reason that they come up into a point has to do with some specific symbolism at the time. So if you were to take two circles, and if you were to intertwine those circles, that intersecting piece would look like the fish shape that's often used as a symbol within modern Christianity. That overlapping circle represented the overlap between men and God. So that section in the middle, that fish shape, if you were to turn that on its side, the fish shape, it's known as a vesica Pisces. It literally means the fish. And so this is the shape that we see at the top of the Gothic arches when they come together, whereas the Roman arches are rounded at the top. So these are different time periods, different artistic and architectural styles, which were designed to bring different images and thoughts to people's minds when they saw them. So that's something that we see throughout. Let's continue to explore. Guys, this was all once within that palace, but what we find, check this one out, guys. The original structures, this is now turned into literally an apartment. People just live in these structures. So these original 1700-year-old structures were put in place, and then since then, lots of people have come in from all over the world, and what they've done is essentially laid their own architectural styles in this very limited amount of space. So you have buildings, you have restaurants, you now have museums, You have all of this piled. Some of it is clumsily designed. Other pieces are absolutely stunning, stunning pieces. All right, guys, so look up there. You can see the bell tower. Okay, let's be real quiet, but what we're going to approach right now is a local Croatian choir. So this is a specific type of a cappella music that's sung here and celebrated here in Croatia. The area that we're entering right now is called the Oculus. If you look up, you'll see in reference to the eye. Look up there, guys. You can see how it domes up and then it's opened there in the roof, allowing the light to come down through. Look at that, guys. The Oculus, you can see as the rocks go up, forming that dome. And then what we're going to do right now, pass through the Oculus and out to the other side. This is the main courtyard, guys. What we're going to see here, go up through this Roman arch, and then we will take a right. We're going to work our way down there. This is the mausoleum. This was the place that Diocletian commissioned to be built as his final resting place. So this is one of the Sphinx that was taken from Egypt. So there were 19 taken from Egypt. Only 4 remain. This is the one that hasn't been destroyed. So most of them had their heads chopped off, their arms chopped off. Interesting irony here, guys. As we look up right here, this is the mausoleum. The mausoleum, this is the final resting place that Diocletian had designed to be buried. So before he retired, he created this place so that this could be a retirement home, but also a area where he could come and be buried. What we see right now is not necessarily indicative of the way that this place looked originally or the way that he had designed it to look. And this is the reason. Diocletian believed in the ancient Roman gods. So these were pagan gods. It was the same kind of gods that you hear about with Greek mythology. So Jupiter and Mars and some of these other ancient mythological gods. Because of that, he designed this mausoleum to face directly across from another important structure that we'll see in just a second, which is actually the Temple of Jupiter. His father was Jupiter. That literally was his name, and he believed that he himself was the reincarnated form of the god Jupiter. So there was a belief that as Roman emperor, that you were actually godlike. You've taken upon yourself this sanctity, and you represent the will of the gods executed out towards the people. So what we see here, this mausoleum, this was designed to be his final resting place. It was designed to pay homage to those gods, designed to be across from that temple of Jupiter. But what took place is after he died, there was a shift in the religious beliefs of the Roman Empire. Constantine converted to Christianity. Constantine was the next emperor. And because of that, Christianity became the main religion of that empire. And as that took place, all of these pagan gods were taken down, and there were representations of Christian stories as well as Christian deities being placed in those locations. And so the interesting irony is that Diocletian was responsible for what's known as the Great Persecution. Under his authority, thousands and thousands of Christians were captured, were tortured. Some of them were placed in these arenas to fight like gladiators against animals, against each other, literally fighting to the death. And then at the same time, thousands of them were killed, they were enslaved, they were used to build this actual structure, this palace. So the irony is that after he died, this final resting place was restructured so that all of essentially the representations of the religious belief system that he had persecuted became the symbols that adorned his final resting place. So as we come around here, we can see this giant tower that's been constructed with the Baroque architecture. That really elaborate architecture was put up literally at his final resting place. This wasn't one of the original structures. This was added later. You can see how the art style has changed. This Baroque architecture, this really elaborate architecture, as well as those Gothic arches, that was put in after he'd been laid to rest. This Baroque architecture, those really high details on those pillars, the amount of complexity. This was an artistic style that was embraced by the Catholic Church, that newly Roman Catholic Church with Constantine. This was a structure that you can see up on those pillars. This was designed to set the Catholic Church apart from the Protestant Church. So this is a style that was adopted by that Catholic Church, and it was encouraged to be used. The Protestant churches at the time were using really, really simple architecture, and so there was a push in the 1500s and beyond, when a lot of these additional structures were built, to actually use that Baroque architecture. Guys, so as we continue forward, just directly across from that mausoleum, what we see is what's now known as the baptistry of St. John the Baptist. But what this was originally was the temple of Jupiter, honor to his father, and then also to the god Jupiter that he believed he was a reincarnated version of. Hello. All right, this right here, guys, this is one of the Sphinx that I mentioned, but this one, the head has been destroyed. All right, we got a very narrow passageway, guys. Con permiso. Con permiso. Hola. Con permiso. All right, guys, here we go. So now working around to the back side of Jupiter's temple. Let's continue and work our way through these narrow corridors up on the north side of the palace. All right. Here we go, guys. So just pay attention to the stonework. The stonework starting down below us and then working all the way up. These stones, as I mentioned, were transported from the island of Brach all the way across that strait and then used to construct everything starting in the floors and then working up. And then, as we'll see in just a bit, even some of the structures that are underneath our feet. Guys, absolutely incredible. So you can see right here, this is a perfect representation of the Gothic arches. Those were put in after. And then as we turn around, you can see that giant Roman arch and the dome up above. All right, let's take a left and we'll continue to explore up here. There's a couple of things I want to show you guys just outside the north gate, and then we'll come back in and I'll show you guys my favorite part of this palace. All right, so an interesting side note, guys, about this place. At the time when Diocletian was here, the emperors, they wore togas that had a purple stripe that went along the border of the material. This purple was incredibly significant at the time. It represented royalty. It represented the combination of the color red and blue. Red representing man and blue representing the gods. And so the union of those two, which created purple, represented exactly what Diocletian was claiming. This this combination of man and God. And what it did is it pointed to that office that he held as the emperor. As the emperor, he was responsible for the spiritual well-being of the people within that empire. And so this color, really, really difficult to find dyes in nature to be able to make that color. There was one location that was incredibly important, located in a city which was anciently known as Mogador. This is now known as Essaouira in the country of Morocco. So the reason it was so important is because located just out of that city in Essaouira, there are these islands that contain a certain type of predatory snail. And this predatory snail, when it feels as though it's being put in danger, it releases a type of ink. This ink is released from a gland. This is the same type of reflex that takes place with squids and octopus. The ink that comes out of that gland, it can either be collected or these snails can be crushed and the ink can come out. It takes 12,000 of these snails being crushed to be able to generate enough ink for one toga, the stripe on one toga, that purple stripe. And so this was incredibly, incredibly valuable, really difficult to come by. And so there was a trade system that took place between what were known as, which were known as the Phoenicians at the time. This dye was known as Tyrian purple, the Tyrian dye. So the Phoenicians at the time, they created this trade network to where they could sell this dye. The name Phoenician literally means the land of purple. So the purple dye, incredibly important, used on the togas of the emperors and the ruling elites within this kingdom and throughout the rest of the Roman Empire. Guys, we're going to continue our way. We're now north of the city. We're going to work up and we're going to see a statue which was created in 1929 known as Gregory of Nin. Gregory of Nin was a Croatian bishop who opposed the views of the Pope. One of the things that he was in opposition to was that all of the religious services were done in Latin, except for most of the people no longer spoke Latin, they spoke Croatian, and so they would go to Mass, but they wouldn't understand anything that was being said. So he fought against that. Eventually, the Pope granted them permission to be able to have their religious services here in Croatia in Croatian. So that was one of the reasons that there's been such a strong Catholic influence in Croatia. This is a statue of him from behind. We'll come around and we'll see him. You can see he's got a look of disdain on his face. There's also a belief that if you go up and if you rub his toe, that's good luck. We'll see. Can I rub just real quick? Good luck, huh?
Yeah.
Super fun. All right, guys, so look at him. That is Gregory of Nin. Look at that angry bearded face. He's super upset. So this was built in 1929, and it was actually placed inside the palace. In 1941, this entire place was occupied by fascist Italians. And when that took place, they actually took the statue, brought it out, discarded it outside of the wall. Shortly after the Allied forces came in and actually bombed the city, and the fascist Italians were removed, and basically the beginnings of the former Yugoslavia began to be created. The statue was erected again. All right, here we go, guys. So let's work back into the city, and then we're going to go back to that main square. Off to the left, you'll see the mausoleum. Off to the right is where we found the Temple of Jupiter. We're actually now going to go down below into the foundation system and the cellars that were used to create a stable platform so that the actual living quarters of the emperor and his family could be built. So the reason they did that is actually, what you don't notice is that we're actually on a hill. So starting north and then working south, there's a slant. And so in order to create a level area to build this entire palace, they had to excavate down below and create a foundation. Here we are, guys, back in what's known as the peristyle. It's an absolute zoo here, but people from all over the world, super stoked to see these places. So we're gonna give them that opportunity. Off to the left, this again is the mausoleum. Remember the Black Sphinx, we have the lions that are guarding the entrance. We've got some Roman soldiers. And then over to the right, that's where we went and we saw the Temple of Jupiter. Now where we're going, guys, is down underneath. So this is what's below the temple. The cellars here, guys, the cellars here weren't even discovered until recently. This is something that as people came in from all over the world and settled this area, lots of different cultures and people, lots of different rulers and empires, starting with the Greeks, then the Romans when this was built, and then continuing on as this place changed hands between the Austro-Hungarian Empire, between the Venetians, between the Bosnians, between the King of Montenegro came here with the help of the Russians, and then back to the Venetians, and then back to the Austro-Hungarians, and then former Yugoslavia, and then Croatia. As all of that took place, there were people that used this refuge essentially as a refuge. So they would hide out in here. And then what took place is the areas underneath where we find the cellar, this was essentially used as a dump. So people put trash down here. There were sewage systems that were drilled through the rocks and it actually would fall down into the cellars. This has been cleaned up to some extent. There is, I gotta admit, guys, there's a little bit of an organic smell down here. So we'll come down here, guys, and we'll see one side of this. This is to the left. Look at those incredible arches. So all of this coming up, all of this has been cleaned out. These huge stones put in place. Wow. You can see all the different walls, the different chambers, some of these leading to the outside. Very cool. Guys, this is absolutely fascinating. The amount of work that went into this. When I made that claim earlier, that there's enough stone in here to actually fill up the pyramids in Egypt, 7 million cubic meters. It might have been difficult to be able to actually imagine that, but when you realize that this goes down several floors below the ground and all of these giant stones that were painstakingly placed just to lay the foundation upon which would later be erected this incredible structure. So let's work our way out to the other side, and then we'll see, guys, if you recognize this view. All right, check this out, guys. Okay, lots of people down here. We'll try and bypass that. All right, come check this out, guys. We're gonna turn and actually go into the cellars here. Right here, come check this out, guys. All right, so, gosh, absolutely stunning. So this is actually, some of you guys might actually recognize this. This is the place where Khaleesi, the mother of dragons, kept her dragons in Game of Thrones. So all of that was filmed down here. Let's take a quick walk through here. You can look up, guys. If you look up, you can see the holes that have been drilled through. As I mentioned, at one point, those were used as the sewage system. So clearly there has been a huge amount of cleaning that's taken place. Let's go over here. Let's check out some of these side corridors. So this goes on forever, guys. The acoustics down here is incredible. Wow. So part of the reason that the acoustics are so strong in here is that the emperor wanted to be able to hear if there were any invaders coming in from underneath. Guys, look at these stone walls, these massive walls, chipped away and then sent across. All right, here he is, guys. Man, we've been talking about this whole time, Diocletian. So, loved by some, absolutely hated by others. He was known for unifying the Roman Empire, but he was also known for the abuses and murders and the persecution of thousands and thousands of Christians. Absolutely stunning, guys. All right, let's just take in these views just a little bit more. Let's walk over into this other side. All right, check this out, guys. Okay, let's just take in a little bit more of these views and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Guys, this has been absolutely incredible to be able to explore this place with you, starting out at the harbor in the city of Split, working our way around, and then being able to see all the history, all the incredible architecture that's still in place, built nearly 2,000 years ago here in Diocletian's palace. Wow. Guys, this is one of the coolest places I've ever been. You could spend hours in here just exploring this. Very cool. All right, I'm your trainer, Tommy Rivs, coming at you from Diocletian's Palace here in the beautiful country of Croatia. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you soon.